Welcome back, Dignity Story Z family. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers. If today's tale touches your heart, like, subscribe, share with someone who believes in true love, and hit the bell so you never miss a moment. Now, settle in, because this story is pure romance, full of secrets, fate, and one twist you'll never see coming. Thank you for watching. Your support means the world to us. Asterisk, the 49th floor of Cain Industries hummed with the quiet efficiency of money being made. Sebastian Cain's corner office existed in perpetual twilight, floor-to-ceiling windows, filtering Manhattan's golden hour through tinted glass that cost more than most people's yearly salary. The city sprawled below him like a conquered territory, but the view had long since lost its power to stir anything in his chest. At 34, Sebastian had perfected the art of emotional amputation. 3 years since Elena walked away with half his fortune and all his capacity for trust, he'd rebuilt himself into something harder, sharper. His reflection in the window showed a man carved from expensive marble Armani suit tailored to perfection. Steel gray eyes that hadn't softened since the divorce papers were signed, dark hair styled with military precision, the intercom's buzz. Cut through his cold meditation, "Mr. Cain, the new intern orientation begins in 10 minutes. Patricia Wells' voice carried its usual efficiency, but Sebastian didn't respond. Interns were background noisier faces that would learn, like everyone else, that dreams were luxuries this building couldn't afford. What he didn't know was that one of those eager faces belonged to someone who would shatter his carefully constructed fortress in ways he never saw coming. 2 floors below, Amelia Rose clutched her worn leather portfolio like a lifeline. The marble lobby of Cain Industries gleamed under crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than her father's. Annual income back in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Population 8,000, a number that felt microscopic in this cathedral of commerce. Her auburn hair caught the artificial light as she joined 12 other interns, immediately cataloging how her thrift store navy dress marked her as different. While they wore confidence like designer accessories, she wore determination like armor, remembering her father's calloused hands pressing $20 bills into her palm before she left for New York. "You have more worth than money could ever measure," he'd whispered. Patricia Wells addressed the group with military precision, her sharp eyes cataloging each face for future reference. "Welcome to Cain Industries. You represent the top 1% of students from the country's most prestigious universities. However, talent without dedication is worthless, and dedication without results is failure." Amelia listened with the intensity of someone who knew this was her only shot. While others shifted uncomfortably at the harsh welcome, she felt electricity in her veins. This was her moment to prove that small-town determination could outshine big-city privilege. After orientation, she was assigned to the 25th floor architectural department. Her hands trembled with anticipation as she gathered her things, unaware that her path was already intersecting with destiny in ways that would change everything. The keycard felt heavy in her palm as she stepped into the elevator, watching the numbers climb toward her future. Exhaustion painted shadows under Amelia's eyes as she navigated the maze of Cain Industries' 30th floor. Her first day had been a whirlwind of building plans, complex software, and the crushing realization that she was swimming in an ocean where everyone else seemed born to breathe underwater. She'd already identified 3 design flaws in the current project observations she'd noted but hadn't dared voice. Not yet. Not until she understood the delicate ecosystem of this corporate jungle. No coffee had betrayed her during lunch, leaving a brown stain on her dress that made her self-conscious among colleagues who changed outfits like seasons. She needed to freshen up, to armor herself in the spare blouse she'd brought, before heading to her assigned company apartment. The floor seemed abandoned, most employees having fled to whatever expensive lives they lived outside these walls. Amelia found what looked like a private changing area mirrors. Privacy. Perfect for a quick wardrobe adjustment. She was down to her simple white camisole and navy skirt when she heard them. Footsteps. Expensive Italian leather on marble flooring. Approaching with the confidence of someone who owned everything they walked on, Sebastian Cain, had been working until nearly 8, as had become his ritual since the divorce. The 30th floor housed conference rooms he used for private meeting spaces where millions changed hands with the signing of papers. He was retrieving documents from conference room C when he noticed unauthorized light bleeding through a doorway. Security was his religion, so no one accessed these floors without explicit permission. Suspecting either a breach or careless employee, he pushed open the door without announcing himself. Time crystallized. A young woman stood with her back to him, auburn hair falling in soft waves over delicate shoulders. She wore a simple white camiso that somehow possessed more elegance than any designer gown he'd encountered at charity galas, where society women hunted him like prey. There was something pure about the scene, like stumbling into a Renaissance painting where beauty existed without agenda. For the first time in 3 years, Sebastian Cain felt his heart stutter against his ribs. Amelia sensed the presence like a shift in atmospheric pressure. She turned slowly, her brown eyes widening as they met steel-gray ones that belonged to the most powerful man she'd ever been in the same room with. Sebastian Cain, the man who could destroy her future with a word. Their gazes held with the weight of something neither understood, but both felt a recognition that went deeper than names or circumstances. Something primal and dangerous and absolutely forbidden. "I'm so sorry," Amelia whispered, reaching for her blouse with shaking fingers. "I thought this was the changing room." Sebastian found himself speechless, a condition that had never afflicted him in boardrooms, where he'd dismantled grown men with surgical precision. This slip of a girl had rendered him mute, with nothing more than her presence and the genuine embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "The changing rooms are on the 15th floor, he managed, his voice rougher than intended. "Must have gotten confused with the floor numbers," she said, now properly dressed but still flustered. "Today's been overwhelming. It's my first time in a city this big." Something in her voice had its small-town honesty wrapped in determination. Sebastian stepped fully into the room instead of leaving as protocol demanded. "Where are you from?" "Cedar Falls, Iowa." "Population 8,000. "Gosh." She blushed immediately. As if the number might offend a man who commanded global empires. "I grew up in a town not much bigger," Sebastian found himself admitting, though he couldn't fathom what invisible force was compelling him to share personal history with a complete stranger. As Amelia gathered her things, he noticed her portfolio worn, but cherished. "The kind a struggling student might guard like treasure? Architecture major?" he asked, nodding toward her papers. "Yes, sir. Iowa State University. I know it's not as prestigious as Harvard or Yale like the other interns." But prestige doesn't design buildings," Sebastian interrupted, surprising himself. "Talent does." Their eyes met again, and in that moment both felt the ground shifting beneath foundations they'd thought were solid. Neither knew they were standing at the edge of something that would consume everything they thought they understood about themselves. 3 weeks later, Sebastian Cain found himself doing something unprecedented, looking forward to accidental encounters. Amelia had become a ghost that haunted his sterile world glimpses of auburn hair and conference room reflections, the sound of her laugh drifting from the architectural department, the way she bit her lower lip when concentrating over building plans. He told himself it was curiosity. Nothing more. But curiosity didn't explain why he'd started working late more often, why he found reasons to review architectural projects personally, or why he'd quietly instructed Patricia Wells to ensure Amelia Rose's internship extended through the year. "Find her," he'd commanded his assistant that morning, his voice betraying nothing of the chaos beneath his composed exterior. Meanwhile, Amelia was fighting battles on multiple fronts. Her fellow interns had begun treating her like a threat, after she'd identified and solved a structural problem that had stumped the senior architects for weeks. Jealousy wore expensive clothes, but it cut just as deep as poverty ever had. "Small-town charity case thinks she's smarter than Columbia graduates," she'd overheard Jennifer Martinez whisper to David Chen during lunch. But worse than their resentment was the way her heart hammered whenever Sebastian Cain appeared in her peripheral vision. He was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with his corporate power and everything to do with how he looked at her like she was a puzzle he was determined to solve. When his assistant appeared at her desk that afternoon with instructions to report to the executive conference room on the 50th floor, Amelia felt her world tilt on its axis. The elevator ride felt eternal. When the doors opened, Sebastian stood silhouetted against the Manhattan skyline, hands clasped behind his back in a pose that suggested complete control over everything he surveyed. "Miss Rose." His voice carried that rough edge she'd begun to recognize as dangerous. "I've been reviewing the Morrison Hotel project." Amelia's throat went dry. She'd submitted her analysis 3 days ago, pointing out design flaws that could cost millions in structural repairs down the line. "Yes, sir. Your suggestions saved this company $12 million. He turned to face her, steel gray eyes intense enough to burn. "The senior architects missed what you caught in your first week." Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by something more dangerous: pride. "I just noticed the load-bearing calculations seemed brilliant," Sebastian interrupted, stepping closer. "Your work was brilliant." They stood 3 feet apart in a room designed to intimidate world leaders, but all Amelia could focus on was the way he said her name like it meant something. "I want you to lead the Morrison project," Sebastian continued, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. "Full architectural oversight. Your own team." "Mr. Cain, I'm just an intern. You're the most talented architect to walk into this building in 5 years." Another step closer. "Don't you dare diminish yourself because others are too insecure to recognize excellence." The air between them crackled with something that went far beyond professional respect. Amelia felt heat rising in her cheeks as Sebastian's intense stare seemed to see straight through every defense she'd ever built. "There's a gala tomorrow night," he said quietly. "Potential clients, investors, I want you there as my personal guest." The words hung between them like a confession neither was ready to make. "Sir, I don't think it's not a request, Miss Rose." His smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "It's an opportunity." "Unless you're afraid," the challenge in his voice ignited something fierce in Amelia's chest. She lifted her chin, meeting his gaze with fire he hadn't expected from someone so seemingly delicate. "I'm not afraid of anything, Mr. Cain," good Sebastian murmured, his voice carrying undertones that made her pulse race. "'Cause neither am I." As Amelia left his office, she didn't see the way Sebastian's hands trembled slightly as he watched her go, or how he pressed his forehead against the cool window glass afterward, wondering what the hell he was doing. Neither of them realized. They were already dancing on the edge of a precipice that would either destroy them both or forge them into something stronger than steel. The gala was in 18 hours. Everything was about to change. The Meridian Ballroom glittered like a constellation, brought to earth crystal chandeliers, casting rainbows across marble floors. New York's elite moving through the space like beautiful predators in designer armor. Amelia stood at the edge of it all, wearing a black dress she'd bought with her last $100, feeling simultaneously invisible and exposed. Sebastian appeared beside her like smoke made flesh, devastating in a tuxedo that probably cost more than her college tuition. When he offered his arm, she felt electricity shoot through her fingers at the contact. "You look stunning," he murmured, and for once his voice held no sharp edges. The evening unfolded like a fairy tale written in champagne and starlight. Sebastian guided her through conversations with architects, whose names she'd studied in textbooks, investors who controlled the skylines of major cities, clients who spoke of buildings like poets discussed verse. And through it all, she felt his presence like gravitythe, way his hands settled protectively at the small of her back. How he introduced her not as an intern, but as the brilliant mind behind our Morrison Hotel renovation, the pride in his voice. When she discussed load-bearing innovations with a group of seasoned engineers, "You're different tonight," she observed during a quiet moment on the terrace, Manhattan sprawling beneath them like fallen stars. Sebastian's expression softened in ways she'd never seen. "So are you. You belong in rooms like this, Amelia. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." The way he said her name like a prayer, like a promise seemed, her heart skip against her ribs. "Sebastian," she whispered, and the sound of his first name on her lips seemed to break something loose inside him. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes. "You're dangerous, you know that?" "I'm just a small-town girl. You're extraordinary." His voice was rough with something that sounded like need. And you're making me feel things I swore I'd never feel again. The space between them compressed to nothing. Amelia felt her back against the terrace railing. Sebastian's hands braced on either side of her, creating a cage she never wanted to escape. His gaze dropped to her lips, and she could feel her pulse hammering in her throat. Sebastian, the spell shattered as his phone buzzed against his chest. He pulled back with a curse, answering with sharp professionalism that couldn't quite mask his frustration. "What is it, Patricia?" Amelia watched his expression change, confusion melting into something cold and terrible. His eyes found hers, and in them she saw the exact moment trust died. "I see," Sebastian said quietly into the phone, his voice carrying the kind of calm that preceded volcanic eruptions. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention." He hung up and stepped back from her like she'd become toxic. "Sebastian?" "Wrong, Elena Vasquez," he said, each word sharp enough to cut. "My ex-wife. Ring any bells?" Amelia's blood turned to ice water in her veins. "I don't understand, don't." A single word cracked like a whip. "Don't you dare lie to me. Not when I just found out that Elena Vasquez has been paying your rent, your tuition, everything. You're her goddamn spy." The world tilted sideways. Amelia gripped the railing as nausea rolled through her stomach. "That's impossible. I've never heard that name before tonight. Patricia just received copies of bank transfers. $50,000 from Elena's personal account to yours over the past 6 months? Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" "No," Amelia whispered, her voice breaking. "Sebastian, I swear to you, I don't know anything about Get Out." His voice had gone arctic. The man who'd looked at her like she hung the stars replaced by the cold corporate destroyer she'd heard stories about. "Get out of my sight. You're fired, Miss Rose. And if I ever see you again, I'll destroy what's left of your pathetic little life." Tears she couldn't stop streamed down her face. "Please, just listen to me, security." Sebastian's voice cut through the ballroom like a blade. As 2 guards approached, Amelia felt something inside her chest break apart. The man she was falling in love with, man she'd thought was falling in love with her, with such hatred that she could barely breathe. "I trusted you," Sebastian said quietly, his words somehow worse than shouting. "I was starting to." He didn't finish. I didn't need to. As security escorted her from the ballroom, Amelia caught a glimpse of herself in the mirrors that lined the walls, mascara streaking down her cheeks. The black dress that had made her feel beautiful now, feeling like a costume in a play she'd never auditioned for. She'd lost everything in the space of 5 minutes, and she didn't even understand how. What she didn't see was Sebastian, standing alone on the terrace afterward, his hands shaking as he gripped the railing, or the way he closed his eyes and whispered her name like a man praying for forgiveness he didn't deserve. Neither of them knew that the real game was just beginning. And Elena Vasquez was playing them both like pieces on a chessboard they couldn't even see. 3 months of silence stretched between them like scar tissue. Sebastian buried himself in work with the dedication of a man trying to forget his own name, but Amelia haunted him in ways that made sleep impossible. Every auburn-haired woman on the street became her for a heartbeat. Every architectural magazine featuring innovative designs reminded him of her brilliant mind. He'd had her investigated, of course. Patricia Wells had delivered a file that painted Amelia Rose as exactly what she'd claimed to be. A small-town girl whose father worked construction, whose only crime was being too talented for her own good. The bank transfers were real, but they'd been routed through so many shell companies that tracing their true origin would take months. But pride was a poison, and Sebastian had been drinking it for too long to stop now. Amelia, meanwhile, had returned to Cedar Falls with her dreams. In ashes, and her father's worried eyes following her every move, she'd found work at a local firm designing strip malls and ranch houses. But her heart remained 49 floors above Manhattan, shattered across expensive marble. The truth came on a Tuesday that felt like any other. Elena Vasquez walked into Sebastian's office wearing the smile that had once convinced him he could trust another human being. 3 years of divorce hadn't dimmed her predatory beauty-sharp cheekbones. Platinum hair, eyes like green glass that reflected everything and revealed nothing. "Hello, Sebastian. You look terrible." He didn't stand. didn't offer her a seat. Do you want Alina to apologize? She settled into the chair across from his desk with feline grace. About that little intern situation, I may have overreacted. Something cold crawled up Sebastian's spine. Explain. Elena's laugh was like wind chimes made of razors. Oh, darling, you still haven't figured it out, have you? That sweet little girl from Iowa really was innocent. The bank transfers, the money trail, all of it. She examined her manicured nails with theatrical boredom. I had to get creative. To break up your pathetic little romance, the world seemed to tilt. Sebastian's voice came out deadly quiet. What are you talking about? I've been watching you, Sebastian. Waiting for you to find someone you actually cared about. And then that little nobody showed up and made you smile. Elena's green eyes glittered with malice. So I created a paper trail that would make it look like she was working for me. Quite brilliant, actually. Why? A word ripped from Sebastian's throat. Because I wanted you to suffer like you made me suffer. Because I wanted you to know what it feels like too. Lose something precious. Alina leaned forward, her smile sharp as a scalpel. And because that girl was making you human again, and I couldn't allow that? Sebastian's hands pressed flat against his desk. Every muscle in his body coiled for violence. You destroyed an innocent woman's life out of spite. I destroyed your chance at happiness, Alina corrected. Which was always the point. The sound that escaped Sebastian's throat was barely human. In one fluid motion, he was around the desk. Elena's wrist caught in his grip as his voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. Get out of my building. Get out of my city. And if you ever come near Amelia Rose again, I will use every resource at my disposal to destroy you so completely that people will forget you ever existed. Alina pulled free, her smile never wavering. Too late, Sebastian. The damage is done. That little girl will never trust you again. You made sure of that? After she left, Sebastian stood alone in his office as the weight of what he'd done, what he'd lost, crashed over him like a tidal wave. He'd destroyed the only good thing in his life based on a lie. The flight to Iowa took 4 hours. The drive to Cedar Falls took another 2. When Sebastian pulled up in front of Robert Rose's modest craftsman-style home, he felt smaller than he had since he was 12 years old, and his father had caught him in his first lie. Amelia answered the door wearing paint-stained jeans and her father's old work shirt, and Sebastian forgot how to breathe. 3 months had made her thinner, sadder, but no less beautiful. When she recognized him, every emotion he'd ever put her through flickered across her face before settling into weary resignation. What are you doing here? Her voice held no warmth, no hope, just exhausted curiosity. I came to apologize. Sebastian's voice cracked on the words. And to grovel, and to beg you to let me explain what a complete fool I've been. She studied his face for a long moment, then stepped aside. You have 5 minutes. In her father's living room, surrounded by family photos and handmade furniture that spoke of love without luxury, Sebastian told her everything. About Elena's confession, about the fabricated evidence, about how he'd let his fear of being betrayed again blind him to the truth that had been standing right in front of him. I destroyed us, he finished, his voice raw. I destroyed you, and I will spend the rest of my life knowing that I was the biggest fool who ever lived. Amelia sat quietly through it all, her hands folded in her lap, her expression unreadable. When he finished, silence stretched between them like an ocean. You hurt me, she said finally, her voice small and broken. You looked at me like I was poison, like everything between us had been a lie. I know. Sebastian slid from the couch to his knees in front of her, his pride finally completely shattered. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry, Amelia. Why should I believe you? Why should I trust you ever again? Sebastian reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Because I'm giving you everything. 51% controlling interest in Cain Industries. The company is yours. Fire me. Keep me. Destroy it, Allie. Don't care. I just want you to know that you're worth more than everything I've ever built. Amelia's eyes widened as she opened the envelope, seeing legal documents that represented billions of dollars. Sebastian, I can't. I love you. The words came out broken, desperate, absolutely true. I love your brilliant mind and your brave heart, and the way you make me want to be better than I ever thought I could be. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm asking anyway. Well, tears were streaming down her face now, and Sebastian felt his heart breaking all over again. I love you too, she whispered, and I hate that I love you because you hurt me so badly I didn't think I'd survive it. Then let me spend forever making it up to you. Sebastian's hands trembled as he reached for hers. Let me prove that I can be the man you deserve. Amelia looked down at their joined hands, at the legal documents that proved he was willing to give her everything, at the face of the man who'd broken her heart and was now offering to put all the pieces back together. Okay, she breathed, but if you ever hurt me like that again, I won't. Sebastian pulled her into his arms, pressing his face into her hair, feeling like he could breathe for the first time in months. I swear to you I won't. 6 months later, they stood together on the balcony of their new Homea house they'd designed together. Built together, filled with light and love, and the kind of trust that could survive anything. Do you ever regret it? Amelia asked, wrapped in Sebastian's arms, as they watched the sun set over the small town she'd convinced him to relocate to. Giving up the empire? The power? Sebastian pressed a kiss to her temple, his arms tightening around the woman who'd taught him that love was the only empire worth building. Never, he murmured against her skin. You're my everything, Amelia. Rose. My heart, my home, my future. Everything else was just noise. As stars began to appear in the Iowa sky, they held each other close. Two souls who'd found their way through darkness to something brighter than they'd ever dared imagine. Love had conquered all, but it had demanded everything in return. The end.